Chesapeake is essentially the tutorial supercross track. It has smooth jumps that the early game ATVs have no problem tackling, and large quantities of room for you to learn and get acquainted with the controls. Overall, the track is very well built and doesn't suffer from some of the same problems the later tracks do, but that's mostly because of its uninspired and overall boring layout. Wilkes-Barre is the complete polar opposite of Chesapeake and is quite possibly my favorite in the game. It features 3 large rhythm sections that are very challenging to tackle. There are also some split lane doubles into inside-outside corner options. This track is built incredibly well with buttery smooth transitions between the jumps, rhythm sections that challenge and give you multiple options for how to tackle them, plus one of the rhythm sections actually has 2 lane options, which is a cool touch. Syracuse has a very janky but somewhat charming layout. It has some cool flowing rollers and jumps into and out of corners and a couple challenging rhythm lanes, but this is the first track that has a problem with extremely rough transitions inside its rhythm lanes. They funnel you into the same jump lines because some of the transitions are just too steep to flow properly through. The best way to tackle this track is to just preload as hard as you can and clear as much of the section as possible. I had a really hard time with this track. Latrobe is a very janky and somewhat poorly built track. It has completely nonsensical jumps and split lanes, and most of the jump faces are extremely abrupt and cause the ATV to act unpredictably. The finish line rhythm section is also so compact that you are best off just trying to clear the whole thing. The jumps are too close together and steep to really be used. With that said, I do actually think the large split whoop section with the offset singles is pretty cool, and I am all for some massive jumps, but this track just misses the mark on everything it tries to do. Tupelo was a very interesting track. It has a couple different dragon's backs, a sweet little turning rhythm section, and a dual whoop section that starts out small, then after a small gap becomes much taller and more of a send rather than lean back and blitz. It has the same problem the last couple of tracks though. Some of these jumps have really rough faces, and a couple of the landings are just too steep and don't feel good to use. I found myself landing on top of the jump after the finish line rather than the downside, since it was easier to stop without the ATV doing something weird. Santa Fe was a frustratingly difficult track, and it really wasn't because of the intricate layout and thought-provoking rhythm lanes. The only thing thought-provoking is how this could have possibly passed QA testing. Most of the jumps are very poorly built, with sharp edges at the bases of the jumps, most of which are way too close together and are too steep to use as proper landings or flowing takeoffs. With that said, I do think this track has a very interesting layout with cool jump placements, and I see what they were going for with the rhythm lanes, but more time needed to be taken to make sure everything flowed naturally and that the jumps were spaced and better shaped. Menifee is the final Supercross track, and I almost really like this one. It has a more traditional Supercross layout with a blend of rhythms, whoops, and large doubles and triples. It's another track where I see the vision and think the execution in terms of layout and ideas is there, but once again, poorly built jumps keep this from being enjoyable. I actually think some of these rhythms are the worst in the entire game, but for some reason it doesn't bother me as much as it did on Santa Fe. Presidio Park is the tutorial track, and because of that, it is a very straightforward track with easy, smooth jumps and wide corners. Aesthetically, it is very nice being placed in a pine forest with a campsite vibe and a warm evening ambience with the orangey pinkish hue lighting a cloudy sky. Little tents and trailers line the track, and there's even what I'm assuming is a fire watch tower in the middle of the track. Nestled in a snow-covered forest, Chateau Halifax is built right on top of a ski lodge. It has you racing under a large deck and ski lift, and even through a cutout in the lodge itself. It's such a nice environment with little cabins and snow fences lining the track, which itself is very nice and well built. It has some smaller doubles out of corners, a gnarly wide open rhythm section, and a massive step down next to the ski lift. This might be my personal favorite track in the whole game, though that might be unfair since I am heavily biased towards snowy environments. Yucatan Dunes was a very bleh track for me. It's built, unsurprisingly, in sand dunes and honestly is very well decorated given the desolate nature, but the track is just kinda underwhelming. Nothing really stood out, no massive hits or interesting rhythm lanes, and they didn't really lean into the natural dune formation that they would on tracks later in the series. The biggest standout is that it's the first track to cross over itself, but more tracks are going to do this in far more interesting ways. Lexington Trail has a pretty basic hillside layout with a couple large rolling jumps and two rhythm sections with some pretty gnarly lines you can go for. This track, while very basic, is one I enjoy quite a bit, due in part to its red and orange autumn hues. It's built inside of a dense birch forest, and while the color palette is great, it unfortunately does fall flat overall, as there just aren't any interesting set pieces. Just the trees and the odd sponsor billboard or tractor tire. Despite its relatively dead and colorless backgrounds, Badlands has a very interesting layout and environment. It has a weaving, almost chain-linked layout crossing itself repeatedly. The jump lanes are very fun, and there are a couple that require you to slow down and think about how you are going to tackle them. The sunset ambience is amazing, and the wires hanging over the track and connecting light posts is a really nice touch. I love the blown out warehouse, broken fences, and random debris littered across the place. It gives it an eerie and abandoned vibe. Wonder what this place was used for. Manitoba Mills is really cool. It's built in what kind of feels like a decaying pine forest with a large logging operation. There's a mill that you ride under, a building being worked on, heavy machinery for clearing trees, and trucks with trees littered around the track. It's almost like this is some kind of social commentary by Rainbow Studios on how destructive these operations can be. Nah, I'm just kidding. Old games didn't do stuff like Make You Think. Despite kinda struggling to get a good recorded lap, I think the layout is pretty good. I especially like the wooden covered bridge that crosses over the track, though it sets you up very awkwardly for the jump after it. Kodiak Pipeline is a snow track. Easy dub. Despite being another quite barren environment, this permafrosted valley has some unique details, like a search and rescue copter that flies around with the landing pad, snowmobiles, and of course the pipeline that surrounds the track. The layout is also pretty fun, though it has some odd design flaws not really present in some of the other tracks. Some of the jumps are a little too close together and jagged, and the finish line is very awkwardly placed. You can either jump over it or use the large kicker to clear the banner if you can. Unrelated note, I found out that there is a time attack bug where if you crash while recording your fastest lap, it will bug out the ghosts animation. Night falls over the dense forests of Salem's backlot. Being the only nighttime track in the entire game, there is a very uneasy vibe with its entirely empty environment. Because of this, it is a massive standout. Stars litter its blackened overcast sky, and peeking through the trees is one big-ass moon. The track itself is unfortunately kinda lacking. It has some good elevation and off-camber corners, but the jumps feel a little awkward and out of time in some spots. The rolling hills are fun to float over, and the large downhill rhythm section flows effortlessly when you get it right. Also, despite being named after the most infamous witch trials, there are zero references to it. Red Rocks is another standout track, with massive rock walls and arches overhanging the track and a red desert look that seems to be inspired by places like Monument Valley. The track suffers from some of the same problems I've gone over on the others, oddly placed and shaped jumps, and even some banks that seem to be too steep to use as berms, despite looking like that is what they are intended for. It was never a huge problem since I always stayed down in the flat parts, but I did get tossed around for seemingly no reason at a couple points. I'm not really a fan of this track, but Summer's Raceway feels like a precursor to the Pro Nationals in Fury 2. It has a very cleaned up, professional presentation and a snaking layout through 2 hillsides with a little central valley. There are a bunch of little rhythm sections on the track, and all of them just have really awkward entries. None of them really flow with the rest of the track, and I think it would have been better if these sections were flat or had one tabletop or double instead. Overall, I think this is really the only national track that truly is a miss. Tamarack Ranch is the final national track, and it's okay. The track layout is elevation focused, which is really cool, but it has all kinds of little bumps and grooves that make it inconsistent to navigate. There are some big floaters which are awesome, but be careful, you can tag the finish banner if you get overzealous with the preload. Aesthetically, I really like it, but not as much as Red Rocks. Cactuses and shrubs litter the environment, and there are a couple rock arches that overhang the track, which adds some flavor, and honestly, it's not the worst desert environment in the game, or even in the series, if I may be so bold.